So I just have to take a quick picture. Get everything in there. Okay, any questions so far? Nope. All right, so what we're going to do is talk first about the writing process. As we talk about the writing process, I do have the process written down for you guys. You can take some notes on this as we go through each of the steps. Please don't write everything down. It's more important for you guys to pay attention to what's being said and digest what is being said than it is for you to write every word down. So we're going to talk first about the writing process and the steps of the writing process. Those of you who've been in English 3 with me, you know that there's another process that we talk about and we go with, and that's the reading process. So what does it mean to be active? What does that mean? Okay? Mobile or physically involved. Physically engaged with what it is that you're doing. So writing isn't something, it would be nice if we could just say, hey, I need a 5-page paper on communism. And it's there, but that's not the way it works. So we need to go through a process. Yes? You may. Yep. But if we go through the steps of the process, it's not as difficult. And remember what I told you guys yesterday. If you go through the steps of the process, then we will get to the end result. If you don't go through the steps of the process, then you're probably going to be in here again. So go through the steps of the process and you get the end result. The steps of the process are meant to help you get ideas out and then explore those ideas a bit more. So when we talk about the process, the writing process, we're talking about 3 major steps. And we're going to divide these steps up specifically, and we're going to focus on each of these things. And we're actually going to treat it as 5 different steps. So the first step in this is the pre-writing step. So on the side that says the writing process, you've got the gear things. You'll see pre-writing and, what is it? Pre-writing and planning. Thank you.
Drafting.
Yep, drafting is the next one. So the first part of this is everything that you do before you actually start writing.
Basically brainstorming?
It is not necessarily brainstorming. So before you guys start writing, it's important that you are clear on understanding the assignment. So this is where most students end up messing up in the very beginning. So, what's that? Okay, so I don't understand your question. Okay. So the first step in this is understanding the assignment. So if the assignment says describe communism, I'll just keep going with that. If it says describe communism and then you start talking about maybe specific leaders, that doesn't necessarily connect unless you make it connect. So you may say, okay, well, here are some qualities and characteristics that some communist leaders have. Well, then that makes that connection. But if you don't clearly understand the assignment and understand the limitations of the assignment, then you are setting yourself on a path for disaster.
Who that is?
Hi. So the first part of this is making sure that you understand what the actual assignment is and you understand the boundaries. So you're going to get a lot of boundaries when it comes to your assignments. So an example of this, let's say that you have an assignment, and on that assignment it has 4 lines, and you write in the first one. Do you think that you have sufficiently answered that question?
No.
Probably not. So when you're looking at the assignment and you're looking to understand what the assignment is talking about, know what your boundaries are. So if you have 4 lines, you probably need to write at least in 3 or 4 of those lines. If that means that you need to write a little bit bigger, then do that. It matters. If that means that you need to write a little smaller because you're kind of windy, then write a little bit smaller. So all of this is understanding what the limitations of the assignment are. If it's due, the end result is due, let's say September 16th. You probably need to get it done September 15th instead of September 16th. So you need to start understanding the limitations of the assignment and understanding what the end result is and any goals along the way. So in this class, I'm not going to say, hey, your essay is due here, and then you just go. I'm going to say, okay, the first part is due this date, the second part is due this date, the third part is due this date. And I'm going to expect you guys to hit those dates along the way. Again, if you don't need those steps in the process, then that should be shown to me tomorrow when you guys do your diagnostic. So I should see that. It should be a beautiful essay. It should be flawless. It should not have any issues. If that's what I see tomorrow, then I'll say, hey, this student doesn't need this class. So we should get this person in another class. So if you can get to that end result without going through those steps, okay. But the first part of this is making sure you understand the assignment. And this is where a lot of students mess up. So once you understand the assignment, or you feel pretty confident about what you understand about the assignment, then you can start brainstorming. So this is where you start to get ideas out. Now, does anybody else watch America's Next Top Model? Okay, so a few of us. So one of the things that models have to do is be absolutely ridiculous. So there may be times where they have to stand on their head, they have to sit on an elephant, they have to do things that are absolutely ridiculous. That's kind of like this step where you're brainstorming. I want you to get everything out. Purge yourself of all of your ideas. It's the same concept. When you purge yourself of your ideas, you just get all of that stuff out. And we're going to talk about some different methods that you can use to get those ideas out. Brainstorming is one of those. So brainstorming is essentially making a list of ideas. It's kind of like your grocery list. Anybody ever made a grocery list? Yeah. My husband has a par list, so he has all the parts.
So that falls under drafting, right?
No, that's not drafting. So this is just getting your ideas out. So this is the pre-writing. This is the beginning of it. Yep, it's still step one. So brainstorming is one way. You make a list of all of your ideas. Anybody know what this is called?
Web.
It's a web. It's a modified concept map. So you can call it a web. So you start with an idea, and then you start to branch off of those other ideas. So if I talked about, if my main idea here in the center was something about my kids, then I would have to add some more in. But I may have one about Coy, and he's a runner, and he's a giant. And then I have one about May, and I start to explain some qualities and characteristics of her. So this is just a way for you to get those out in a visual way. So it's definitely more visual than just making a list. Another method is free writing. So free writing is just putting your pen to paper and just writing whatever is in your head about that topic. Now, what's the problem with free writing? Writing whatever is in your head about that topic. I'm sorry? Go ahead. It's a hot mess. Usually it's a mess. And are all of your thoughts about that writing? No? I'm thinking right now, man, I'm hungry. Ooh, it's hot in here. I'm thinking all kinds of stuff in my head. So if you're writing all those things down, you're going to have all kinds of stuff in there that may or may not apply to the paper. So making a list or making a bubble of some kind, that is usually a little bit more helpful. So this is what you do. You get the ideas out, and then you go to the next stage, which is planning. So when you're planning, you're taking this mess of ideas and you're organizing them. So you're putting them in a more organized fashion. So an example of this, I was talking about my kids. So I have my son Coy, I have my daughter May, I have Wyatt, I have Drew. So Coy is 16, 13, 14, 10. Coy is a runner. May is a volleyball player. What'd you guys call Drew yesterday? He's a swindler, or he's an entrepreneur. We'll call him an entrepreneur. Okay. He is. Girls too. It's bad. So, and Wyatt's a hugger. If there's a career in it, that's about all he's probably going to be doing.
Now he's
So-
a con man. Yeah, he's a con artist.
Okay, so Drew,
Scam artist.
he doesn't
He
scam people. He's just smart.
He taking it.
So when I'm organizing these ideas, I'm going to start to put these in a logical order. So looking at these ideas, what might be a logical order for me to put these ideas in?
Oldest to youngest.
Okay, I might do the oldest all the way to the youngest. So I may do Coy, Drew, May, and then Wyatt. An alternative to that is to do youngest to oldest. So either one of those would work. What's another option?
In your boxes that you put like the certain because you look to follow what you basically put. So like in those boxes you should match your boxes. So you need to stay on order.
So do I need to go Coy, May, Drew, Wyatt?
Yeah, I mean the way you got your boxes lined up.
You do how food stamps do, you do the last alphabet.
Okay.
They don't let you get off order by any means.
So I have a lot of options, but which option do you think is the best option? Tony, what did you say? Which option is the best one?
I thought oldest to youngest.
Good. Oldest to youngest is the most logical. So even though there are a lot of options, that is the most logical option. I could do things in other order, but this is going to look the best if I go from the oldest to the youngest. Good. Yes.
I want to which is more important, like to make it seem like
Yeah. Yeah. I probably don't want to put which one is most important because that's favoritism. Go ahead. So that is going to act as some of my details in my paragraphs. So in organizing those pieces and putting those pieces together, I can start to match up some of those details. So I have their ages, but I also have some qualities and characteristics about them. That is going to come into play later on when we talk about the essay structure.
Why wouldn't
It's fine.
why wouldn't we, after you said you're taking kids and you had all your children right there?
There's a question.
You could not involve them their struggles.
So I would connect all of them to me.
Yeah.
Okay, I could do that. I could add that in there. I could add that in there. Yep. And part of what I need to focus on is what the assignment requirements are. So if the assignment is asking me the most significant people in my life, that's going to work. I might even add my husband in. Maybe. Probably not. So I'm going to add my kids in because they're my world. They are everything to
I
me.
thought your dog was.
My dog, I might add my dog in there. Not the
Rufus,
dumb
what's his
dog.
name? Rufus?
No, that's Sarge. He's not my dog. He's my
They just dumb dumb.
So it is. So I would talk about my kids and I would put them in the order of their age because I don't want to say, hey, this kid is more important than this kid.
Oh man.
I'm not going to do that. I love my kids. So it just depends on the topic. We go back to the topic. So planning it out is organizing your ideas. The structure is not set, but the content structure is. And we're going to talk about that more here in just a few minutes.
Where we at on
We're just on planning, so the second step. Yep. So the third step here is the drafting. This is the one that a lot of people just say, hey, I don't want to do it. So they want to hire somebody else to do it. They want to talk to somebody else about doing it. They just look at it and they don't want to do it. So sometimes you just have to just say, okay, I'm going to do it. You just do it. So drafting is just getting the words into sentences and getting that on paper. So the draft is usually worth a large percentage of the final results. You cannot turn in a second draft without a first draft. So you can fail an assignment because you haven't done the parts. You can't turn in your final draft until you turn in your first draft. Even if it's a mess, I can work with a mess as long as you give me something. So drafting, just get the words on paper. It does also need to be typed.
Huh?
So you guys are going to make sure that you have plenty of time to type your documents. So the way that this process is going to work, I'm going to give you guys an assignment. I'm going to say the first part is this, and it's due this date. The second part is this, it's due this date. The third part is this, it's due this date. I'm going to give you guys time to work on it in class, to type it up, to get that piece done. I know, it's okay. A lot of people are. So we're just going to work on it as much and as quickly as possible. So I had students who were completely overwhelmed with computers last term, and we worked through it. It's okay. You're going to have a lot of different things to do right now. Okay? So the drafting part is just getting some ideas on paper. If you don't have the ideas on paper, I can't do anything with it. I can take your brainstorming. I can take your plan, which is a formal outline. I can take those pieces, but I can't give you a grade on anything. So drafting is just getting it down.
Oh, that's some monkeys.
Yep. So the next two steps are revising and editing. These are the steps that students usually mess up. They mix these two up and they don't go through the revising before they go through the editing. So when you fix your paper, oftentimes students go, oh, I have spelling errors. Oh, I missed a comma here. That is not what you guys need to focus on. You guys need to focus on the whole pieces. So revising is kind of like looking at it as a whole overhaul. So do I need to move whole pieces? Do I need to move this paragraph into this area? Maybe I have the essay about my kid. Maybe I have it from my oldest to my youngest, but it's really not flowing very well. So maybe I flip it. Or maybe I use one of those qualities and characteristics and focus in on that instead. So I'm going to try a few different things in the revising step. So in the revising step, that's where we're looking at our support to see if we have enough information. We're not looking at the grammar and punctuation. That is looking at the little stuff, but I can still read your paper and understand your paper if you're missing a comma. I can still read it and understand it if something is spelled incorrectly. But I can't read it and understand it if you don't have it doesn't make any sense. So revising is what I want you guys to focus on. Leave the editing to me.
Step 32.
That's step 4. This is step 4. Looking at the revising. So revising is looking at the whole pieces, while editing is looking at the minute details. So for those of you who know me, you know I love food.
Rabbi Singer.
What's that?
Rabbi Singer.
Okay. What is that? Okay. So when you think of the writing process, here's how I want you guys to think about it. I want you to think about it like baking a cake.
You gonna bake one for me?
I'm not going to bake one, but you think about the pre-writing as deciding what you want to eat. So let's say that you think, hey, I'm hungry. I want a cake. You have to take into consideration certain things. So if I say I want to make a cake, I'm hungry for cake, what is something that I might have to consider? Okay, maybe the instructions,
Mixing bowl.
the equipment. So I have a lot of people in my house, so I have to look at, okay, my husband's here, so it has to be chocolate. That's the only thing he'll eat. If my kids are there, it can be anything, because they'll eat anything. If my parents are there, it may have to be certain things. So the pre-writing is kind of like deciding, okay, who do I have to please? What do I have to do? What do I want to eat? The planning is kind of like gathering all of the ingredients together. So if you're cooking, you have to make sure that you have all of the ingredients. What happens if you start putting things together and you run out of eggs, or you don't have enough eggs? You have to scrap everything, or you have to stop, and you have to take off, you have to do something else. It's really annoying. So if you are planning your ideas out and you just don't have enough stuff, then you're giving yourself a disadvantage. You need to have everything before you begin. Good. Drafting is like actually mixing and baking the cake. You got to get it in the oven at some point. It's a great cake. It's a great idea. But if you don't get it in the oven, it's not going to matter. It's never going to be a cake. Revising is like icing the cake. So here's what I want you guys to remember about revising. What happens if you pull a cake out of the oven and then you ice it?
It's gonna be good.
It melts. It melts. It's not going to stick. When you finish your paper, get up and move around. Do something else. Get away from your paper. Because if you are still stuck in the mode of writing your paper, you're going to fill in things that don't exist. Your mind is still in that mode of writing. So you're going to fill in things that aren't there. You're going to think it sounds okay because you just left it. So when you revise, I want you to get away from it for a while and then revisit it. Come back to it. And then the editing is like decorating a cake. So I'm going to eat a cake if it has icing on it. It doesn't even really have to have icing on it. I'm going to eat a cake because I'm a big girl. I like cake. I like any kind of cake. I'm not picky. But if it has icing, it's going to be even better. If it has decorations, hey, it's going to be pretty. It's going to look good. And I might want to eat even more. But at the very least, I need to have icing. So it doesn't have to be beautifully decorated. It just needs to have the icing. So make sure you have the icing on it. All right, any questions over the writing process? Nothing?
Ouch. Nobody
Let's see what that's next here. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what the essay structure looks like. So again, if you got this, you don't have to worry about this, then this should just be a quick refresher, and then you can prove that to me tomorrow, and you will be good to go. Okay? So the writing process are the steps that you take to end up with a good essay. So the essay is on the back side. So the basic format for an essay is on the back. So when we're talking about the format of the essay, we're talking about three basic components. You have an introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So with the introduction, there are certain things that you want to include in that. So the introduction has certain things. What are some of those things that an introduction is going to have in it?
title.
Okay, the title isn't part of the introduction. The title is going to be sitting by itself.
The main idea.
Okay, so the main idea is one of those key components. We call that a thesis statement. So you're going to hear thesis statement. Where's your thesis statement? What is your thesis statement? You're going to hear that over and over again. The thesis statement is the main idea of your entire essay. So it's just the main idea of your entire essay. So your introduction, do you just start out with, this is my essay?
No.
What's it better to start out with?
My essay is based on.
Oh my gosh, no. No. I want you guys to be really careful with being direct. So don't say, this is what I'm going to write about. I'm going to tell you about. Don't say those things. Just say them. But before you say it, what else?
Take a thing from what the essay has to.
Okay.
I didn't hear.
So, I know, this is a really great suggestion. So, whatever your essay is asking, you can start out with that. We look at that like a teaser. So, your teaser may be connecting directly back to the writing prompt. So, the writing prompt is just what you have to set you off, to set off the essay, and what you're supposed to write about. So, you may take a part of that. If you're doing a research paper, maybe you add in something really interesting, an interesting fact that connects back to that. So you start with some kind of teaser. Sometimes we call this an attention getter. It can be called many different things. What else?
Yeah, I've heard the attention.
Okay, so you have to do what we call orient the reader. So you're going to orient the reader without saying, hey, I'm going to tell you about this. So you don't need to say, hey, I'm going to tell you about this. You're just going to give them some information about the topic. So when you orient the reader, you're giving them some information about the topic. Anything else? Okay.
Another thing on introduction is you just have you grow up. What do we go?
Introduction.
Okay, so let's think about this. We've got some good questions. Let's think about these questions. So the introduction is kind of like the first time that you meet somebody. You don't just start having a conversation. You don't just start saying, hey, we've got this car and it's not working very well. It's not working very well and I'm really tired of it. You're not just going to walk up to somebody and start talking like that. That doesn't make, well then that's an issue. That does not make a lot of sense.
Excuse me, can you help me?
Okay, if you go up to somebody and you say, hi, my name is, and you say, I would like some help with this. That's essentially orienting the person. That's explaining what you need, what you want. So the introduction is all about introducing the idea, introducing the topic, getting your reader familiar with what it is that you're writing about. Oftentimes you're going to have things like definitions in here. So an example of this, let me give you guys an example. So I had a class a while back and we just ran out of time, so we did a group paper. So our group paper was an argument. And whether you disagree or agree with this, I don't need to hear that. I'm just going to tell you what it was about. So our thesis was that welfare recipients in the state of Indiana should face mandatory counseling and drug testing. That was our thesis statement. So in order to orient the readers, we didn't just come out with that information. We had to define certain things before we could give them that information. We had to make sure that the audience, the readers, knew what it was that we were talking about. We had to define things like welfare. We had to explain what we were talking about with mandatory counseling. We had to go into detail about drug testing and what that was like, what we were testing for. So we had to give that information before we could give our thesis statement, or it wouldn't have made much sense. So as we went into the body, we started explaining all of those things in more detail. We gave them a taste of it, but we didn't give them everything. So think of your introduction as the trailer for a movie.
Like an outline?
The outline is going to be a little bit different. So in the outline, you are going to have your introduction. And the thing that will be the most important will be the thesis in that.
And you talk about the people that receive this stuff, right?
We're not going to talk about papers.
I don't think so.
I'm just saying that what you was entitling though, right?
We were talking about welfare recipients. So we don't have time to go into that detail because we're running out of time. We're running low on time. We can talk about the paper later. Before you leave a paragraph and go into the next paragraph, for those of you who've been in my classes before, this was a vocab word. Before you leave one and go into another, what do you have to do?
You have to. I know that.
You do need to indent every paragraph. That's something you need to do.
Start by saying words.
But before you leave one and go into the next one, you have to do what we call a transition.
Oh, I'm so going to think.
So a transition leaves one and goes into another.
But
So-
you gotta get some basic facts. Like you can't just go into something in a totally wrong way.
You can't just start talking about the next topic. You have to smoothly go into that.
I don't think somebody would give their name to a cop. You know what you said earlier about the name thing?
I'm sorry. It should let me get out everything.
At 2:25. So a transition is a sentence that takes you into that first idea. Was there a question?
No, I got it.
You got it? Okay. So it takes you from one idea into the next. At the end of every paragraph, before you start the next paragraph, you need to transition. Transitions are usually something that people get and they understand it and they do really well with it, or they really, really struggle with it. So we're going to work on getting you guys to the point where you really understand it. So you're going to transition into the body paragraphs. Now the body paragraphs are great because they all basically have the same components. So with every body paragraph, you start out with what we call a claim. So you're going to start every body paragraph with an initial claim. This is also sometimes referred to as a topic sentence. It's the main idea of that paragraph. So the thesis statement is the main idea of the entire essay, and the topic sentence or the claim is the main idea of that paragraph. So do I just tell you what I want you to know and then go?
No.
What do I need? I need some support or evidence. So I have evidence.
Is that for possible?
This is also known as support. So when you are doing a research essay, this evidence almost always comes from another source. You bring in support from outside people.
Yeah, support.
So after every piece of evidence,
You gotta have support, facts,
and that's going to be the evidence, but what do I need to have for that? What do I need to have after that? Do I just leave the evidence there? I leave the
Once you get the evidence in, you need to
I need reasoning. So the evidence can be facts, but I need to explain what those things mean. So this is me explaining or connecting.
And after that is closure. You gotta have closure, don't you?
We're going to talk about that in just a second, so hold on to that and think about what that's called.
I know it.
So I'm going to have my initial claim. I'm going to have some evidence that supports that claim. So this evidence goes back to that claim. And the reasoning connects the evidence to that claim. So let me give you guys an example of this. So if my claim is that my brother murdered somebody. So my brother murdered his girlfriend. So my brother murdered his girlfriend. That's my claim. He would love to do that. I do not like her at all. So he murdered his girlfriend. So my evidence may be, well, they knew each other.
You see they have big ears?
My evidence may be that they knew each other. Well, that's not very strong evidence. So I may connect that and say, well, they were intimate with each other. So that may be me connecting back to that claim. Maybe I say, well, they were together the night that she was murdered. It's kind of loose evidence, but that's my evidence. So think of the evidence as the stuff that goes to court and that everybody has access to. So my reasoning is going to be my connection to that. So if I say, oh, they knew each other and they were intimate and they had fought the night before and they had this and they had that, that's all a bunch of loose stuff. So I need a bunch of that. So if you have loose evidence, you're going to need more of it. So after every piece of evidence of support, you're going to need to connect it back to that claim. You're going to need to have reasoning. Explain. Sorry. So how many times do I need to provide evidence and reasoning?
At least 3.
As many as it takes. So an example of this. Let's say that my claim is that my brother murdered this girlfriend, and my evidence is his confession. Well, that's pretty solid evidence. Maybe I even have the murder weapon with his fingerprints on it.
That could be.
I just have 2 pieces, and that should be enough. But if I have a bunch of loose stuff or stuff that's not really clearly connected, the more that you have, the better off.
So maybe the conclusion is guilty or not
Because then you would do the job of forensics.
Huh?
Or are you? Would you do?
I want to be a lawyer.
Really?
Yep.
Isn't that? Well, that's a tree.
That has money tied to it. That's
Yeah,
what I
Yeah, lawyer.
So evidence and reasoning are always a couple. So I want you to think of ER. They're always a couple. They always go together. So this is as many as it takes. You need as much evidence and reasoning as it takes to prove your claim is true. So let's say that you're done with this paragraph, but you need another paragraph. So what do you need to do? You're leaving one paragraph and going into another. Transition. Good. So you have to transition out of that one paragraph into the next paragraph. So how many body paragraphs do you need?
You need 4. It's 8.
How many bodies?
Yep.
It's 3, ain't it?
4.
As many as it takes. As many as it takes to prove your point.
That's your favorite word today. As many as it takes. That's the same
It's what you guys need to know to get your point across. If you have a really great essay and you just have 3 paragraphs, that might be all it takes.
Oh, so you
Don't get locked into, I need to have this many sentences for a paragraph, or I need to have this many paragraphs for an essay. Now the standard is 5. And that is, the 5-paragraph essay is what a lot of people teach, and that is the minimum that will help you be successful on the ECA. But sometimes 5 is too much, sometimes 5 is not enough. Do you have a question? Okay, so what do we need in the conclusion? If we've finished our paragraphs, and let's say we have 2 really good paragraphs, or 2 really good body paragraphs, we have a good introduction, what do we need to do in the conclusion?
Closure, but you know, like your thesis is concluding, meaning it's adding up and you just do steps or something.
We restate it. Good. We restate our thesis. That is the most important thing to do. So if we restate our thesis, we're going to take this statement and we're going to reword it. So a quick and easy tip with a thesis statement to restate it is to take the back end of your sentence and put it at the front and put the front end at the back, and then you automatically have to change some words. Restate thesis. So if my thesis statement is, my brother's girlfriend is a jerk, then maybe restating it is jerks include people like my brother's girlfriend. So I just take the back end, put it in the front, take the front end, and put it in the back. That's all I have to do.
Y'all ain't got a good relationship. You don't listen.
Not a big fan of my brother usually. Makes very bad decisions.
That's what you're not a fan of.
Is it just in women?
No, it's in life. Everything in life. Okay, any questions over this? What else could you have in your conclusion? Do you just want to have one sentence there and that's it?
No.
You want to have a wrap-up of some kind. Good. So for those of you in the back, it says wrap-up. Sorry it's so low.
Does that mean we can make it a rap?
No, that's a different kind of wrap. So when you wrap it up, you can do a couple of things. You can summarize your ideas. And then you can go out with something interesting.
Bang.
Go out with a bang. That's actually what I call it.
I know I
Like
took
the
it
Big
from-
Bang Theory?
No, I don't. So when you go out with a bang, I want you to think of it as a call to action. So if we're back on let's say we're talking about murder, so my brother murdered her. Maybe my call to action is, you should find him guilty of murder. Put him in jail. You know that. So that is my call to action. The call to action is what I end with. So the introduction is always going to be one paragraph. You want to indent that paragraph, so that means you hit the tab button. For those of us who were around a few years ago, you don't have to press space bar, space bar, space bar, space bar. Crap, how many do I do? Backspace, backspace. You don't have to do that anymore. You just hit tab one time. For those of you who are too young to remember that, it's a great joke, so just know that. So the conclusion is how many paragraphs?
5.
1. The conclusion is just one paragraph. So to end it, you just have one paragraph. To begin it, you just have one paragraph. How many body paragraphs do you have? As many as it takes. So you can have 2, you can have 5, you can have 10. You can have 25.
Give me 25 reasons. Crazy.
So this is an essay, essentially. It's an essay that I wrote in order to get my final degree. So in this, I know, in this, basically, I wrote about a topic. So I have a thesis statement at the very beginning, somewhere in here. Those are my thank yous.
That's what you typed?
Yeah.
How many?
It's 157 pages. So I have an introduction. In the introduction, I explain all of these things. I orient the reader, I give them my thesis statement, and then I transition. My body is just really, 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 really long. So when we say 25, yeah, it may take 25. It may take 100 pages. It takes as many as it takes to get your point across. Here's my conclusion. Finally got to that. So this is the conclusion.
What you talking about?
It's explaining it, it's giving evidence, it's giving proof. It's supporting what I have to say. And I use a lot of research in this to support what I have to say. So my conclusion in this example is a couple of pages long, because I have to conclude the idea before I finish up. There we go. So that's the very end. So the conclusion is just going to be a shortened version of your introduction, essentially. But instead of orienting the reader, you're summing up what it was that you had to say. You're wrapping up those ideas. And you want to give them something to leave with. So you want your reader to feel accomplished at the end of what you just wrote.
So basically closure.
Yep, you want some kind of closure. So the thing, thank you for bringing that up. The thing I want you to remember with your conclusion, you never want to introduce new information in your conclusion. So that is something that you guys will eventually be tested on. All of this is something you'll eventually be tested on. So in your conclusion, it's important not to introduce anything new. So you do not have a transition in your conclusion because you're not going into something else. You're ending.
So at the end of your conclusion, like, you can go back and recite, like let's say you was talking about, let's see. Let's say you was talking about guns, right? And then you'd be like, well, these are the reasons why I felt that these guns were important. Like that was
you can sum that up in your conclusion. Yep.
You can sum that up.
Yeah, you're going to sum up your body paragraphs in your conclusion.
Right.
It's important to keep it brief and not to drag it on and on and on. So your conclusion needs to be pretty clear and pretty concise.
Okay,
So think of your introduction as, I like the gingerbread man because it was good. So think of your introduction as the head. It's the part that recognizably tells the readers this is what it's going to be about. So when I look at a person's face, that's what immediately makes me say, oh, that's this person. So the introduction is kind of the same way. think of the neck as the transition. So it's the part that connects us to the body. The body paragraphs are all going to be set up the same. So you have a claim, you have evidence, and you have reasoning. So you connect those things before you transition. This is the same stuff you guys already wrote down. And then finally, at the very end, which you guys cannot see very well here, you're going to wrap up your ideas, summarize them, restate your thesis, and then have a call to action. So those are the pieces that you have in there. All right, any questions? Yes. Yep. Were there any extras in the back? Can you pass those up, please? Thank you. So tomorrow, you guys are going to come in, and you guys are going to have a diagnostic essay. So you are going to be expected. You are going to be expected to write an essay. I want to see it as close to this idea as possible. So you may have 12 paragraphs. Probably won't. You can have 5 if that's what makes you comfortable. You're going to have an introduction. You're going to have body paragraphs. And you're going to have a conclusion.
Well, what's that topic?
I'm sorry, I'm totally lost. Okay, you guys are talking over each other again, and you're not letting me finish. So you're going to come in, I'm going to give you your topic, and you're going to have the entire class period to write about that topic. So again, if you feel like, I don't need this class, I don't need any of this information, then you better give me a damn good essay.
You said a damn?
It better be. And then I will get you out of here.
You know you was boy.
But if you give me the crap, we're not done yet. We're not done. If you do not give me a good essay, then you're going to be in here. And remember what I said about next term. You guys remember what I said about writing 3 next term?
Yeah, because we're going to need to get it now.
Writing and English 3 will be together. So if you fail this class, but let's say you pass your English 3 or you've already passed it, sorry about your luck. You're going to be in all of it again.
It's all or nothing.
It's going to be all or nothing. So you're going to be in a block class. So you want to do everything that you can to pass this class. If you don't feel like you need it, I will be the tell of that. So I will let you know if you need it or not. If you give me an essay tomorrow that I think, hey, this student could go in and pass the ECA tomorrow, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to waste my time. So I'm going to work with people who need it. We have another assignment. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
Any questions?
No, ma'am.
So in your journal, I just want some sentences. So I don't need a paragraph, but I want you to think about. Is listening?
Yeah.
I think she needs to speed up because she can't see.
So I want you guys to write about the difference between your current process. And you just wrote about your current process. Where you said, oh, I get really frustrated. Or, oh, I sit down and I just start writing. Or, oh, I do this. You just wrote about that at the very beginning of class.
Different page, same page.
Same page. So I want you to now write about the process the difference between that and the process that you're going to start using in this class. So think about the steps that we have to go through. The pre-writing, the planning, the drafting, the revising, the editing. How is that different from what you were doing before? Yep. Yep. This is your exit tape.
What about that change?
I only have a couple of journals left, so. Okay, hold on a second, guys. There's 2 left.
Are we allowed to use it? Like,
As a reference? That, sorry. Okay, there's a question, and I need everybody to focus on your own paper. Okay? Then I want you to explain why it hasn't changed. And know that I'm going to go back to the first process that you wrote, and I'm going to look at that and I'm going to go, well, yeah, it has changed. So you're not going to get any points. So if you used to just sit down and write, which step is that? Just sitting down and writing. Drafting.
Right.
So maybe you just did the drafting stage. Maybe you used to draft and then you would edit. I'm going to look at your first answer and I'm going to look at your second answer. Most of you will have some significant changes. There are going to be a lot of other steps that you're going to be adding in. So I want you to explain what you're going to do differently from what you did before. So whatever you did before, when you had to write for an assignment, what are you going to do differently? So are there steps you're going to add in? Are there things that you did that you don't need to be doing? Which of these steps do you need to focus on the least?
I'm not.
Okay. So I want you to explain that. So which of these 5 steps do you guys focus on the least? Because you're not the experts at it. That's step number 5. So that's the one you guys need to focus on the least. So for some of you, you may have focused mostly on step 5. For some of you, you may have just done step 3. For some of you, you may have not done anything. So I want you to explain how that's going to be different. I understand this one, and I understand it. So that's this first step. Okay, so you're focusing on this first step and this last step because you have the spelling and asking questions. So you have been focusing on steps 1 and 5 more than the other steps. So you're going to explain how you're going to start adding in the other steps. Okay, so if you think that's this step, then you can explain that. But if you are, basically you're not doing a lot of that. Yeah, you're really not planning a lot. You're just focusing on the other steps of that process.